Now, as for the film and the single bullet theory, Professor Thompson says he can see in the Zapruder film exactly when Governor Connally was struck. He says it was 1.1 seconds after the president was first hit. That is less than half the time it takes to work the rifle bolt and fire a second shot. Remember, 2.3 seconds minimum to work the rifle bolt. Thompson says there was only 1.1 seconds between the time Kennedy and Connally were hit. But 1.1 seconds is too much of an interval for one shot to have struck both men. So if Professor Thompson is right, there was a second gunman and the single bullet theory is wrong. We at CBS News agree that Kennedy probably was struck somewhere between Zapruder frames 210 and 225. We cannot, however, tell when precisely Connally was hit. And frankly, we do not believe anyone can. The experts at iTech Corporation came up with an estimate that strikes us as the most scientific of any thus far.
Frames 210 to 240. Any indication in those frames as to when Governor Connally may have been hit?
What we've done there is to have 5 trained photo interpreters look at the original positive for evidence of anything unusual. And they have all come to the same conclusion, namely that between frames 223 and 226, which is a short span, 3 frames or about a sixth of a second.
About a sixth of a second?
Yes, over somewhere in that 1/6 of a second, they all see evidence of the beginning of an arm and wrist movement on Connally's part, which later, in frame 228, culminates in his very rapidly flipping his hat from one position to the inverted position.
So what your people see over the space of a quarter of a second, frame 225 roughly to frame 230, is what?
We see an arm. In fact, it's illustrated fairly well here in this graph, but I'll just tell you that we see Connally's wrist move first down and then up and then very rapidly down. And by frame 228, his wrist begins to rotate very rapidly, so that 2 frames later, in other words, a total of 1/9 of a second, and sometime in that 1/9 of a second, he has rotated the hat completely from one position to the other. So the interval I'm describing then, which is on the order of a sixth of a second total, we think shows evidence of unusual arm and wrist motion, and we see that beginning approximately at frame 225.
Unlike Professor Thompson, iTech scientists don't claim to know the precise moment Connally was hit. Even with microscopes, computers, and the original film, they say, the instant simply cannot be pinpointed. They did find unusual reactions in Connally, including facial expressions and movement of the hand and hat, which raised serious doubts he was wounded as late as Thompson claims. The iTech findings indicate Connally may already have been reacting to a bullet strike only a third of a second or less after the president. If this is true, it increases the probability that the same bullet hit both men.
Now for the greatest controversy about this single bullet, what critics call the magic bullet. These 3 shell casings were found on the 6th floor of the book depository. Only 2 bullets were recovered. This fragmented bullet, said the Warren Commission, was the 3rd shot, the one that hit the president in the head. Therefore, the Warren Commission concluded, this other, what critics call magic bullet, must have gone through President Kennedy and then into Governor Connally's back, out his chest, through his right wrist, and finally into his left thigh.
The single bullet theory, which is the Warren Commission report sine qua non. If you don't have a single bullet theory, you've got 2 people shooting.
Said, what happened to the bullet that went through President Kennedy's neck? And
David Bellin was a lawyer for the Warren Commission. He came up with the single bullet theory.
We reconstructed the motorcade, went frame by frame using the Zapruder film. It turned out that they were right on line at the time that shot first struck.
To test the single bullet theory, PBS 2 years ago used computer animation techniques not available to the Warren Commission. Precise measurements of Dealey Plaza and the speed and location of the Kennedy limousine were taken to analyze if one shot from the 6th floor of the book depository could duplicate the angle and damage of the magic bullet shot. If the governor did turn as he recalls, perhaps reacting to an earlier shot that missed, the trajectories line up and lead back to the 6th floor window.
This is frame 223 on the Zapruder film. The president, you're just starting to see his shirt cuff here coming out from behind the sign. Here you can see on both sides of Governor Connally his white shirt. And there's his tie right in the middle. In the next frame, something very interesting happens. This lapel on his jacket,
His right lapel,
blows up, covering this part of his shirt. It now eliminates this great question mark of when was the governor and the president struck by a second shot.
We should also see that the governor was holding his Stetson hat in his right hand. And when the bullet strikes and fractures his radius, we should see the hat fly out of his hand. Earlier this year, Sam Donaldson on Primetime Live asked Dr. Bodden if the governor was struck in the wrist, shouldn't his arm or hat fly up in front of his face? This is exactly what happened.
Connally was hit in his right arm near his wrist by that second bullet. That hit caused his right arm to fly up in the air involuntarily. Later, Connally did not remember that brief and sudden motion of his arm. That's Connally's right hand hanging limp. Let's watch it again. Let's look at still frames of the Zapruder film. 223, neither man is hit. Connally is coming out from behind the sign. Now, 224, here comes Kennedy. That's his right hand. It's coming down after waving at the crowd. The next frame, 225, Kennedy's right hand has come a little further down. There's more space between the hand and his chin. Neither man is reacting to being hit. Now they are hit, and in frame 226, you see Connally's hat beginning to go up. Of course, Kennedy's hands are moving upward now. Frame 227 is badly blurred, but that's Connally's hat still going upward. Kennedy's hands are still moving upward too. Again, Connally's hat. Now you can see it more clearly in frame 228. Let's look now at line drawings of these frames. Here's 224. Kennedy's right hand is coming down from a wave. Now 225. His right hand has moved even further downward. Neither man has been hit. Now 226. Both men have been hit. Kennedy's hands are moving upward. Connally's hat is now beginning to flip up in front of his face. 227, the frame that's badly blurred in the original Zapruder film. 228, now you can see the hat more clearly, not only in the line drawing, but in the original Zapruder film frame. That's Connally's hat up in front of his face. In the next frame, 229, the hat is moving downward. Connally is now beginning to collapse. This hat flip motion lasted less than a quarter of a second.
Unquestionably, when the first shot was fired, I recognized it as a shot. I thought of nothing else but that it was a rifle shot. I turned to my right. I had time to think. I had time to react. And I turned to my right to look back over my right shoulder to see if I could see anything unusual, and particularly to see if I could catch him out of the corner of my eye. Because I immediately thought...
Him, you mean
the president. The president. Because I immediately thought of an assassination attempt. I did not see the president out of the corner of my eye, and I was in the process of turning back to look over my left shoulder. And had about come to the point where I was looking straight forward again when I felt the impact of the bullet that hit me. I am convinced beyond question of a doubt that the first shot that was fired did not hit me. Then I was hit. And I was not then, and I have no memory, no recollection of the sound of the shot that hit me. And beyond any question of a doubt, the third shot did not hit me.